I've just finished watching a brand new Korean horror film that's just been added to Shudder called Warning, Do Not Play. So, grab yourself a bottle of soju and let's talk about it. D. Christopher here, bringing you brand new horror-fueled content every Friday, giving you my recommendations on what to watch each weekend. June has been a great month so far for new releases on Shudder. The film I'm talking about today though is one that I was particularly excited about watching, as it ticks a lot of boxes for me. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but this is a South Korean supernatural horror which focuses in on a screenwriter/director who is suffering from writer's block, searching for new ideas for her next horror movie. After her friend tells her about what is rumoured to be the scariest film ever made, a film apparently shot by a ghost, she goes on a hunt for this lost movie and writes about her journey every step of the way. We watch a lot of Korean content in our house, so I was avidly waiting for this to hit the streamer so that I could click play at my earliest opportunity, casually ignoring the instructions in the title. My bar was set pretty high, as one of the last Korean features we watched was Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which of course is a masterpiece. But I was actually pleasantly surprised by the story here and the way it's told. It might not quite be on par with Parasite, but if you like supernatural horror, this is a great choice for you. If I had to compare this to any other movie, it would probably have to be Cigarette Burns by John Carpenter. Warning has a similar concept, albeit very different characters, and revolves around similar themes. It also has an equal amount, if not more, heavy atmosphere. Now, Cigarette Burns is in season 1 of Masters of Horror, which is essential watching for any horror fan, so go check that out if you have not seen it. The movie opens with the camera tracking towards the lead who's fallen asleep in the cinema. Now, I for one was quite relieved that this wasn't an indication of what's to come. The soundtrack builds up to a crescendo as we reach a tight shot around her face. When the music cuts, the lights flicker and die, waking her up in the process. She looks around with her phone torch, noticing that now the place is empty, pitch black, and has an uneasy feeling in the air. Of course, she gets up and runs for the door using just this little LED to guide her way. I love the way this starts. Not only does it allow the film to kind of come full circle by the very end, it also gives you a big dose of atmosphere from the get-go. There's quite an intense blue-grey grade in this first scene before moving on to something far more natural when the story actually gets started in the next scene a couple of minutes later. The film's original title, when it was released in Korea last year, was Amjeon. This is a theatre term which essentially means to replace or rearrange the set under the cover of darkness or under a blackout so as not to disturb the flow of the production. This first scene is the perfect representation of this concept in action. The lights extinguish in a fairly busy cinema, which transports us instantly to a dark, empty space with something far more sinister than whatever was playing on the silver screen. I much prefer this original title over the American one, Warning, Do Not Play, as even though there is an intense warning somewhere towards the beginning of the film, the original title is far more applicable, especially when you reach the end. The first thing you need to know about this film is that the production value is top notch. This isn't always the case in lower budget horror, but in this movie, the image quality is stellar. They really go above and beyond. The sound design and the seamless introduction and disappearance of the soundtrack throughout is done very well, and the cinematography is incredible. The set design and the colours, the creative angles and the compositions all merge together to create something truly special. I hadn't seen any of Kim Jin-won's other films like The Butcher, but based on this I'll certainly be checking them out. From start to finish, I was thoroughly impressed by the images presented, the grade, and the way the story was told through the visual medium. Structurally, you will have to pay attention to this while watching. This isn't just something that you can have on in the background. Well, it is subtitled, so unless you can speak Korean, you'd probably have a pretty difficult time doing that anyway. While the first half of the film is linear and pretty simple to follow, the latter half does ramp it up as we begin to cut between the main story and a found footage film, sometimes even merging the two. I know that makes it sound pretty complicated, but that's more me trying to avoid spoiling anything. You'll understand what I mean when you watch it, but the way the story is told does mean that you'll have to give it your full attention. Story-wise, this is pretty straightforward, even though there are some twists to navigate. Essentially what the director is showing us is the lengths that some people will go to when faced with writer's block and an ultimatum that means they have to get over it, and get over it fast. Mi Jung, the lead, has just 2 weeks to deliver a script for her new film. She's obviously created some good stuff in the past, as the producer makes a point of saying it's like working with a newbie sometimes. Perhaps this is a first feature after creating some successful short films, and she's really struggling with ideas that will work for a longer form piece. When she starts writing about her mission to find this lost, super scary film, she knows she's onto something good, which is why I think the character makes some of the decisions she does, so that she can finish this story, make it dramatic and exciting while still remaining authentic. It does get to the point where you start to think, am I watching a film about her making the film, or is this film that I'm watching the actual film that she's writing as the story unfolds? It does get pretty meta, but rest assured that that's all rounded off towards the end. Even though it is pretty trippy leading up to the finale, it all makes sense, so you won't just be left with no real ending wondering what it is you just watched, as is the case with some films these days that stray away from the standard structures. You can take all that with a pinch of salt, as it is a supernatural horror, so when I say it makes sense in the context of a ghost story. The cast was fairly small, so I was glad to see that the acting is great. There are some smaller characters along the way that give you a little bit of comic relief, but all in all, pretty much everybody in this is somber and dramatic, which is fine when you learn about their lives and the situations that they find themselves in. There just isn't a massive range of emotion throughout. The important thing though is that all the characters are played really well. I find that the first barrier to getting enveloped in a story is bad acting. So the fact that everybody in this cast smashed it allowed me to believe this very far-fetched story for the hour and a half I was watching it. There isn't masses of backstory on anyone, just little bits here and there to help, but really what drives this film is the development of Mi Jung's character and where she is at the beginning to where she is at the end. I didn't really notice any major plot holes, but even if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to say this without spoiling anything, so we'll just skip right over this point. The gore is fairly minimal in this film. I know some people are into super gory flicks, and while there is some gore here, it's nothing over the top and nothing you won't have seen before. The kills are actually a pretty minor part of the story. It's far from a slasher, but there are some bits in there to satisfy your bloodlust. And the special effects, they're okay. It's mainly CG, so there's nothing in there that's going to blow you away, but what they do pretty well. There are also a couple of jump scares in there, but Warning is more about the atmosphere and the story than it is about cheap thrills. All in all, I would give Warning Do Not Play a solid 6 out of 10. It's not going to blow you away, but it is a good watch. I would quite happily recommend it to anyone that enjoys the spooky stuff. If you've already watched Warning Do Not Play on Shudder, or you're planning to watch it after seeing this video, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of the film? And if you did enjoy this video, I would really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button, or perhaps a thumbs up if you're already subscribed. Everything like that really helps us smaller channels out. And be sure to go watch Warning Do Not Play on Shudder. I have put a link so that you can click right through down in the description. So thank you again for watching. I have been D. Christopher, and I will see you in the next one.